It's pretty much every homeowner's worst nightmare, right? A burst pipe, a leaky roof, or a flood. But what happens after the water stops is a whole other story, a story of science, speed, and some serious strategy. Okay, let's dive into what it really takes to bring a property back from water damage.
So let's just start with this question. When water gets into your space, what are the first signs? It's not always this big dramatic flood. The first clues are usually way more subtle. And believe me, they show up faster than you'd think.
You might notice this first. Your baseboards, they're supposed to be flat against the wall, but suddenly they start to swell up and buckle. That's because porous stuff like wood and drywall just acts like a giant sponge, soaking all that moisture right up. Then you might see this. The paint starts bubbling or peeling away from the wall. That's a dead giveaway that moisture is trapped behind it, and the wall itself is totally saturated. And then there is the smell. You know the one I'm talking about, that unmistakable, damp, musty odor. Now, this isn't just the smell of wet carpet. It's often the very first warning sign of the biggest problem that's brewing just out of sight. So all of this really brings us to the core of the problem. Water is what we call a silent destroyer because the damage just gets worse with every single hour that goes by. A tiny little leak can turn into an absolute catastrophe with incredible speed. And here it is, the critical deadline. Mold spores, which are basically everywhere all the time, can wake up and start growing in as little as 24 to 48 hours. This is the ticking clock that the professionals are always racing against. Now, here's something you might not know. Professionals don't treat all water the same. To really understand how they respond, you first have to understand where the water came from, because that source is what determines the risk level. The industry uses this system called water categories, and it has nothing to do with the amount of water. It's all about how contaminated it is. This one classification dictates the entire game plan, from the safety gear they wear to the cleanup methods they use. And this shows you the two extremes perfectly. On one side, you've got Category 1, or clean water. Think a broken supply line under your sink. But on the other end of the spectrum is Category 3, black water. We're talking sewage, floodwaters. It's a biohazard, plain and simple, and it requires a completely different and much more serious level of response. So how do the pros actually turn all this chaos back into order? Well, it's definitely not guesswork. It's a strategic three-phase playbook that's designed to stop the damage, dry out the building, and then put it all back together. Here's the roadmap. It all starts with immediate emergency action. Then it moves into a really scientific drying process, and it finishes with a restoration and rebuild. Let's break down what actually happens in each of these phases. Okay, those first 24 hours are all about stopping the bleeding. This is emergency mitigation. Crews are dispatched immediately, doesn't matter if it's day or night, and their very first job is to get all that standing water out. At the exact same time, they're setting up these huge, powerful air movers and dehumidifiers to get control of the air, all while documenting every single thing for the insurance claim. Now for the science part. See, water is sneaky. It hides inside walls and under your floors. So in phase 2, technicians use these specialized tools, like thermal imaging cameras, to actually see those hidden pockets of moisture. Then they create these controlled drying environments and take moisture readings every single day. The goal is to get the building back to its normal dry standard, what the moisture content was before the damage, because that's the only way to be sure you've stopped mold in its tracks. And this really highlights a super important point. Proper water damage restoration isn't just about pointing some fans and making things look dry. It's about following a strict set of scientific principles and industry standards to make sure the property is truly, genuinely safe. So, how long does that sciencey drying phase actually take? Well, for most homes, you're looking at a window of about 3 to 5 days. It's a marathon, not a sprint, because if you rush this part, you're just asking for major problems down the line. And who sets these standards anyway? Well, the key thing to look for is a certification from the IICRC. That stands for the Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification. It's basically the gold standard for the industry, and it ensures that the technicians are trained in proven scientific methods for everything from water removal to moisture science. Now, here's why this is so important for you, the property owner. It all comes down to the insurance. Following those IICRC standards means that the documentation, all the photos, the moisture readings, is exactly what insurance adjusters need to see. And that means a much, much smoother claims process for you. And this slide just puts it all together perfectly, showing how everything we've talked about hits the wallet. A Category 1 clean water event, that's your baseline cost. But as soon as you move to Category 3 black water, the costs jump way up because of all the biohazard protocols. And the biggest leap of all, that happens if you wait and let mold grow. That's a whole separate remediation project, and it is by far the most complex and expensive scenario. Okay, so we've covered the problem and we've covered the professional solution. Now let's wrap this up with the most important part, what you should do in those first few minutes of a water emergency. All right, here is your emergency action plan. First things first, if it's safe, shut off the water source. Next, immediately start taking pictures and videos. Get everything on record. Move any valuables you can to a dry spot. Now, this is a huge safety note. Do not, under any circumstances, use a shop vac or a household vacuum on standing water. It's a massive electrocution risk. And finally, make the call to a certified professional. As we've seen, every single hour counts. And that just leaves us with one final thought. We've walked through the entire anatomy of a water disaster and its recovery. Knowing the plan is one thing, but it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How prepared are you to actually act when the unexpected happens?